he didn't make it about him. You know, he made it entirely about me. And so all of those trips to go to Andy's fights, he not only did he not stand in the way of those, but he was like all about it and wanted to know what happened, you know, when I would get home. And he was totally supportive. He and my mother. And you know, I don't know if I would be that strong. We're back here, BobbyFish.com. Thank y'all for being here. Make sure you go click the notification bell. You don't want to miss this content. But then, don't be stupid, y'all. Don't fucking be stupid. Subscribe first. It's not rocket science. Subscribe first. You don't need a bachelor's degree to tell you that. You don't need to be the class valedictorian to know you subscribe. Then hit that notification bell. All right? There we go, y'all. All right, now we're on the same page. Anyway, today we're coming at you, and I'm yelling. Why am I? Does anybody know why I'm yelling? I got to stop. So it came highly requested, and I can't see why it wouldn't be, but you're dealing with the most educated feet in professional wrestling. So people out there, you're saying, hey, Bobby, what got you into martial arts? Professor, what was it that got you doing karate? And so it's really kind of funny when you think about it. Is there anything any more Americanized than the word karate? And I didn't realize this, y'all. I didn't realize it until I started studying the Japanese language. So I used to think people were so pretentious growing up when they would be like, it's not karate, it's karate. And the only pretentious if you're pronouncing it with an English accent, because that would be karate. It is actually pronounced in Japanese karate. Because te is hand. I don't remember the exact other breakdown of it, but it's empty hand or some version of that. Anyway, point being, y'all, is that I've been doing this since I was a kid. So 8 years old, I started. I call myself a lifetime martial artist. So obviously, I did not come out of my mother's womb throwing kicks and ninja stars, but it wasn't long after that I started it up. So for me, the first thing that I got into was Taekwondo. Now my parents, and this is no lack of intelligence on their part, but my parents were not up to the subtleties of Asian martial arts. They wouldn't have known that like Kung Fu is a Chinese martial art and karate is Japanese. And what I ended up starting with was Taekwondo. Taekwondo is a Korean martial art, but it definitely, it fit all the requirements that my parents needed to get me started. Like it checked all the boxes. It threw punches, it threw kicks. There were no ninja stars. However, that did not prevent me from getting my Christmas list started every year in the back of like Black Belt magazine. And I definitely included ninja stars and swords and things on my Christmas list that Santa, he didn't bring, probably because my parents didn't want to, raise a axe murderer. Anyway, martial arts, I started 8 years old, young age, and it was a good thing for me that I got started with martial arts because I was the baby of the family. I had two older siblings, an older brother and an older sister. My older brother happened to be a very good athlete. I was not necessarily a bad athlete, but I just had no place to apply my coordination at that point. And other than baseball. And baseball was something my brother was good at right away. For me, not so much. My dad was our T-ball coach. My brother and Jamie Gifford, they would hit home runs, like literally hit home runs more times than not. And my father was having a hard time getting me to pay attention in the outfield because I was more intrigued by the sand and the trees and pretty much anything that didn't have to do with baseball. So for me growing up, I just kind of lived in the shadow of my older brother. And baseball being our first athletic endeavor, him being good, me not being good, it created a dynamic where I think I was a little bit insecure. And I knew my parents loved me. It was not that kind of thing. But I know that, like, it gave my dad and my brother a little bit more common ground to connect on than me. So for me, martial arts became like this thing that I was good at. My brother didn't attempt to do it. He probably would have been fucking good at it. So I'm kind of glad he didn't. But I was good at Taekwondo right away. I was an unusually flexible kid. And so I could throw head kicks immediately. I could do a full split as an 8-year-old. Something that, like, is a good thing, right? To have that sort of mobility and flexibility, especially with DDP yoga now in my life, I realize what a blessing that is. But at that time, just being a misguided kid with fucking hormones blowing out my ass and everything else, I didn't know. And so because I was that flexible, my older sister and her husband, that was one of the things they used to tease me about. They would tease me about the fact that I could go from a standing position to dropping down all the way into a split without like a moment's notice. And somehow it was like looked at as, I don't know, somehow they made me feel as if that was a less than masculine quality. And so I was never proud of it. And I feel like I should have been. And so I kind of connected that with my martial arts, with my Taekwondo, with my, and I was good at that. But I wasn't proud of being good at that because somehow I felt like that was not as desirable as being a good baseball player. So martial arts was kind of this weird thing for me that I loved and I was good at, but I was almost afraid to admit I loved it. And so as time would go on, eventually baseball became a thing of the past for me, which is definitely a good thing because I fucking sucked. And then we got into football. We were playing Pop Warner football, and of course my brother was fucking good at that right away too. And I wasn't great at first. But there was a coach that came along. His name was Andy Farragon. And Andy Farragon would be a very important figure in my story. Andy Farragon was my first football coach, and he was a fucking man's man. There was nothing that wasn't, he was just a shit kicker if he had to be. And I think I looked up to him quite a bit. And not even think. I know I did. And Andy was a former good football player and a great football coach. And here's the kicker. Here's what tied it up for me was Andy was a martial artist. Andy did freestyle karate, and because that was something like it kind of gave me permission. It like gave me permission to be proud of this thing that I was good at. And so I kind of started to veer away from Taekwondo, even though like I had, won tournaments and progressed up through the ranking system pretty quickly and was really doing well with it. I started training with Andy at what wasn't really a school and with a couple other kids from Pop Warner football, but they all seemed to like kind of come and go. Not me. It was me and Andy's nephew, Jared. We were the two that were never not there, and we progressed quickly as martial artists and moved up pretty fast, and we didn't have a belt ranking system per se, but we would get to a point where when we started sparring and stuff, like we Jared and I could go, and that was kind of my martial arts progression at that point as a kid, and if it was not for Andy Farragon, I don't know that I'm still doing martial arts to this day. Andy started a fighting career of his own, kickboxing. And this wasn't necessarily Muay Thai the way that we would understand it today. It was more like silk pants and footies and boxing gloves, like Chuck Norris style kickboxing. But Andy was doing this competitively, and he was goddamn good at it. And he opened a karate school, American Freestyle. And the more that Andy started kickboxing, the more I started sparring. And the more that Andy was getting competitive with it, the more my interest grew in where I wanted to spar more. And so that's what I did. And naturally, like I was pretty good at it. And here I was, high school kid. And I would go on these trips with Andy over some of the weekends. My parents were letting me go, and I would basically be in his corner as he fought other men in these pro-am sort of scenarios. And, for a teenage boy that was into martial arts, it was aggressive, and it was fucking blood, and it was competitive. It was everything that and disciplined. Like it was everything that a teenage boy would be drawn to. And I thought it was just the coolest stuff in the world. And I thought Andy Farragon was just the fucking coolest guy in the world. And all these years later, this is going to be a little bit of a side note, but all these years later, like after becoming a parent myself, I look back and I realize what an absolute gem of a father I had. I didn't know it at the time. But my parents were very loving and very, if anything, they probably let us get away with a little too much. I definitely as a teenager, I got arrested. I certainly pushed the limits. So if I could say anything, they did. They might have let us get away with a little bit too much, but one of the things that my parents at this time, they were letting me go on these trips with Andy, and Andy was an adult, but I realized my father was an older man. My father was on disability retirement from the fire department from the time I can remember. My sister is 15 years older than me. So like my father, who was on disability from the fire department because he fell 4 stories out of a burning building and shattered his hip. My father, I never saw my father not walk with a limp. And so I realize now what this time frame represented for me was huge as far as my maturing as a man, a young man. And Andy Farragon represented this man that I wanted to emulate and I wanted to be. So think about that as a parent, any of you out there, because I know now that, as a parent myself, you could be selfish and you could stand in the way of that sort of a relationship between your son and another male figure of any kind. You could certainly, put a kibosh on that and be like, oh, shit ain't happening, not on my watch. But I realize now, looking back, like my father at that time was aware of what probably some of his limitations were, and that my father, who was a man's man, I mean, my father fought in the Korean War. He was a Marine. He was a police officer when he came home, and then he lateraled to the fire department and spent his adult career running into, buildings that other people were running from. So my father was as man as it got. But I think he realized that like his best days were, from a physical standpoint, were behind him. And here he had a son that was in need of a certain sort of mentoring that he couldn't provide at that time. And he didn't make it about him. He made it entirely about me. And so all of those trips to go to Andy's fights, he not only did he not stand in the way of those, but he was like all about it and wanted to know what happened, when I would get home. And he was totally supportive, he and my mother. And I don't know if I would be that strong and that secure. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be that secure, to be honest. I have daughters. I have all girls. So I guess it, a little bit different. But if I had a son, and was put in that same scenario, I don't know how I would have reacted. But I know how my dad reacted, and I know that I stand here, I sit here today, a better man because of the choice he made, and Andy Farragon is, still a man that is still in my life, and not the way that he once was, but I still speak to him on a regular basis. And if it was not for Andy Farragon, and if it was not for Richard A. Fish, like, the most educated feet in professional wrestling, I'm not sure this motherfucker exists.